I'm here on the job site with Dale, who's a framing contractor.
Hey, good morning.
Dale traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for all his business vehicles. We're here where he needs us most.
Yep, they sure are.
We make it easy for him to save on all his insurance needs, all in one place, with coverage that fits his business and bottom line. Oh, I shouldn't have looked down.
It's all right.
We're so far up here.
Look at me. Take a deep breath.
No, I'm good. So good.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
Another season down for the URC in terms of the Welsh sides, and some teams very happy with the improvements, other teams less happy with their slides. Find out what we all have to say further on in the show. Enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the WRRAP. Sorry to be away for so long, but after an incredibly long season in Welsh rugby, both on and off the field, we all needed a break. But so as ever, I am joined by Hattie, Nick, and Dan. How are we all?
Evening, everyone. Good.
Yeah, I'm good as well, thank you. Yeah.
Hey.
Could be worse.
Excellent. So, not too worried about how our colleagues from the West are doing, but Dan, you were out in Treviso when we last recorded. Would you like to tell the listeners how it went?
Yeah, I've been globetrotting's a bit. I took a leaf out of Nick's book. I did, and I did my best Judith Chalmers impression. May she rest in peace.
May she rest in peace.
May she rest in peace. Obviously, sorry. Hey, do you know what? That lady's name will live on forever, because if you go on two or more holidays a year, you'll be forever known as Judith Chalmers. So she can. Everyone in her family can be proud in knowing that she certainly left a legacy. So yeah, I went out. I took Blackwood under 11s to. I'm not going to try and pronounce what the festival's called, but basically Benetton Rugby's mini rugby festival. And in 25 plus years, maybe 30 years in rugby, it's undoubtedly the best event I've ever been to. If there are any mini and junior section coaches, chair people, whatever it is, looking for some advice on where to go, drop us a line. I'll happily point you in the right direction, because it was the best rugby experience I've ever had. It's spread over 2 days, so we played Saturday and Sunday out in Treviso. They hold it at Benetton's training ground, and a little bit differently to us, they actually play even age grades. So we go all the way through 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s. Over there they go 6, 8s, 10s, 12s, etc. So we was in the under 12s bracket, and little did I know that this being the jewel in the Italian mini rugby crown, they and at the end of the season they basically play all the kids that are not going to be eligible to play in this again. So we took a genuine under 11s team over and played against a load of under 12s. So at one point after the first game, I did think we'd bitten off more than we could chew, but. Some of them were turning up with, wives and girlfriends in the car. A couple of Italian lads had to go home early because they were afternoons that day, and I'm sure one of them was shaving. So, it was an interesting experience. There was a lot of your man going on in defence, but no, the boys stuck it out. There was 80 teams now. We ended up 50-something, early 50s out of 80 for under 12s tournaments. So they did okay. More importantly, they absolutely loved it. They made, it's more than rugby out there. They spent a lot of time with their friends, especially friends that they're not in school with, and so on and so forth. All the parents were great company. Treviso was fantastic. I know you've been, Nick. We spent the one evening up in the square in a pizza place. All the kids playing touch rugby with a load of Italian kids in the square. It was fantastic on a Sunday evening there. So, yeah, I'd highly recommend it. There must have been 4,000 kids playing rugby over the 2 days. And I've never been to an event like that in the UK. I've been to Roslyn Park, and I know Roslyn Park's a fab event. Played there, albeit many moons ago now, so I'm assuming that's on a similar level. But if I was the union, I'd go and tap into what they do over there and try and host something similar, because it's not a bad word. I couldn't fault it at all. There were marquees everywhere set up from all the different clubs. They had Parma ham on the go, local wine on the go, meats, cheeses, everything. It was very family orientated. loads of like stores to go and buy Benetton rugby kit. As you can see, me sporting here now.
Yes, for those on the audio pod, Dan is showing off a very lovely Benetton, was it 3/4 zip?
Very bright, isn't it? Look at that.
Yeah,
Don't look at it
yeah.
too hard. If you're epileptic, you might have a seizure. You know. But yes, it was a brilliant, brilliant event. So my thanks go out to everyone who's organised that over there. I think this was the 46th or 47th version of it. And yeah, if I could go again, I would, because it was absolutely fantastic. So that's where I was the last time you guys recorded. Did you guys been up to anything interesting?
I've got a new washing machine. This is very exciting news to me.
Now there is some other news, isn't there? I think, and I don't know whether you spoke about it last time, but let's break the awkwardness now. Who came joint top of the predictions league?
Yeah, so I was going to leave this till after the news proper, but yeah, so we do have results in the prediction league, and it ended after the regular season with a tie, with both Dan and Nick having 152 points each. Patty in
Congratulations.
third, 139. My
too.
desperate wild gambit did not save me. I finished last, breaking my streak. Now, I asked Nick and Dan how they wanted to resolve this. Did they want to go on total variance, or did they want to use the Cardiff Stormers game? And like the true rugby values gentlemen they both are, they've decided to share the title. Which, because Lee said that any prize I give out has to be from my own pocket, next time I see you, you are both entitled to half a pint.
Good news.
Oh, and I won't drink it all at once either. So, yeah, well, congratulations, Nick. Well played all season.
You too.
You know, I'd like to thank my wife and my kids for supporting me all year, and for you guys making it so easy for the rest of us.
Although I got the draw right on the final day. So
You did.
did.
That is the
did.
big reason why you overtook me in third.
But like,
Oh, hang on, you finished bottom, did you, Harley?
You did.
But
I know after a 2-year winning streak, it's just it's not good enough.
well,
I'll have to gerrymander the results again next year.
That's the way. And obviously, yeah. Anyway, and of course, the other news is obviously tonight's it's our last wrap for me and Dan. Going on to past is new, but it's a nice way to finish off our time with the wrap. Yeah, I'm sure maybe we might be on occasionally in the future, but it's nice that our rugby knowledge has been recognised.
It's about time. It's only taken 30 years.
And I just want, before I'm going to quell the conspiracy theories, we're not bumping them off just because they won the prediction league.
Oh, I'm sure we can fill in here and there. It's just
You've got lives.
I know.
Yeah.
Just
I said Dan. I said
It is
Dan's
rugby.
now a head coach, and Nick, to be fair, has realised the same thing I realised last season, where doing more than one podcast on a regular is really, really difficult, especially if you're hosting one or two of them.
It is indeed. But thank you for putting up with me anyway.
Anyway, I said I'd like to thank you both for everything you've done this season. Thank you, and I mean this is normally what we do at the end, but screw it, we might as well chuck it in here. And thank you, Hattie, for joining in this season as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I said as
They
we
let
have
a
no original
woman
hosts on. There are no original hosts on this podcast.
we woke.
You are so woke.
Just I'm going to try and replace one of you two with a woman, just to really woke it up.
Just woke it up.
Anyway, so that was our sort of more fun personal news. Nick, can you let us know about the more recent Welsh rugby news, please?
Yeah, I'll just concentrate on what's sort of happened in the last week, because obviously an awful lot's happened since we last recorded. So I'll start with the Scarlets. The Scarlets have signed a second row. Maybe they needed one. In Alex Grove, who's 25. He's coming from the Stormers. And if you remember, he had one start in the URC this season while he was on loan with the Scarlets. He previously played in England for Sale Sharks. And I think he made about 13 appearances for them in various competitions. And the Scarlets have also signed a Welsh qualified fullback, Isaac Murray McGregor, 20 from New Zealand. I think he might be a cousin of Joe Roberts.
I think he's the cousin of Blair Murray, I think.
Oh, right. Okay.
And
That
then
would
he
make
just
sense for the
happened to, which makes sense. But I think he happens to know Joe Roberts from when he was visiting as a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's currently in the Canterbury B setup. And staying internationally, they have now appointed a new defence coach, a gentleman by the name of Eamon O'Carroll. and he's joining from St Helens Rugby League team at the end of their season. So wish him well, and all those players as well. At Cardiff, very experienced scrum half by now, Aled Davis, 33, is staying with Cardiff after signing a new deal. And they've also confirmed that another scrum half, Ellis Bevan, 26, is also staying with the Cardiff team. And finally, in this section, actually, I don't know if you've got any Welsh ladies news afterwards, but probably the biggest story from last week is late on Friday, it was announced that the Ospreys have become the third Welsh region to sign a fresh professional rugby agreement known as PRA 25 with the Welsh Rugby Union. From my understanding, this will provide a financial agreement until the end of the 27-28 season, but it's highly likely that the Welsh Rugby Union, but I think it actually goes longer than that, but it's highly likely that the Welsh Rugby Union will trigger what they've threatened for a while, their intention to serve notice on all 4 teams, because they still are adamant they want to go down to 3 professional teams after the 27-28 season. So we'll see where that goes. The key element of the new agreement is that it provides greater collaboration between the WRU, including the growth of alignment on the playing side. And the final bit of news I've got is that the Ospreys have announced that Welsh utility back Dan John, who is 24, will join the Ospreys for the 26-27 season after he's departed from Exeter. He's a Welsh under-20 cap player, and he's had 5 seasons in Devon, and he's made 33 appearances for the English Prem team. So that's the news. I wouldn't mind just having a chat afterwards, perhaps about what you guys feel about the Ospreys signing the PRA. Obviously, I'll chip in my point of view, but I think you mentioned, Hattie, off air, that you might have some news from the women's front.
Yes, so there's been some particularly juicy news coming out of PWR clubs over the last couple of weeks, which will be developing over the next few weeks as the end of the season rolls on. But there's not been an official announcement from the WRU. So keep that in mind. Bristol and Loughborough both announced their leavers lists, and the common denominator amongst both was the huge amount of Welsh and Scottish players who were leaving. I believe it's 11 players from Loughborough and either 10 or 12 from Bristol. Almost all of them Welsh or Scottish internationals, or at least called up into camps, etc., etc. So in Welsh players who are leaving, Kendall Wardby, who's uncapped, but she was in the last Six Nations squad, is leaving Loughborough, whilst Alicia and Jazz Joyce, Jenna De Vera, Sav Picton-Powell and Stella Orin are all leaving Bristol as well. And both clubs gave the reason as why there were so many departures from the Welsh and Scottish players is that with the central contracts from both of those unions, they're requiring the players to go play Celtic Challenge rugby. So it'll be interesting to see people like Kendall Wardby. She, I believe, is not centrally contracted, whether she'll go back to Wales, whether she'll stay in the PWR. The same with somebody like Stella Orin, who has played a lot of Celtic Challenge, but I'm not sure if she's centrally contracted. But we do know that like Alicia Joyce is, etc., etc. We do have quite a few players from Bristol who are Welsh who are presumably staying because they weren't in that list. So that's Kira Bevan, Maisie Davis, Gwennon Hopkins, Jenny Hesketh and Rosie Carr. So some are staying. It is just like a really huge number that seem to be going all in one go. So it might be that, you know, Maisie Davis signed a 2-year contract a year ago, so therefore she has to stay at Bristol, whereas Alicia and Jazz's were not, whatever. However, we also know that Hannah Dalla Valle has re-signed at Gloucester Hartpury, so has Nell Metcalf. Gwen Pearce has re-signed at Sale, and Cecilia Turplotu is moving to Quince. So it's all a bit of a mess, and it seems that half of them seem to be forced to be going back and others aren't. I don't know whether the players that are signed to PWR clubs will have like a thing in there to say that they have to go back for a certain amount of games. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Especially from Sale, Quinns and Gloucester Hartpury, to see what their leavers lists are coming up. Personally, I'm not against it. I think it's good that we've got Welsh players who are contracted for the WRU to be playing in Wales. Um, there's been quite a few players who their injuries have been mismanaged at PWR clubs whilst they're being contracted by the WRU, and then they end up missing out on internationals. However, I still think that what we've seen in the past is that some of the centrally contracted players end up being included in squads when they're not the best choice. They're maybe out of form, they're not playing the best. I would rather see our players being contracted by Gwala and Brithon going forward rather than centrally contracted themselves. That way as well, they can make their own decision about whether they want to play in the PWR on a smaller contract or if they want to play in Wales at Brithon or Gwalia. Like, I, I'm not. I think we've moved past central contracts.
What do the other nations do?
So, Ireland, you can only be centrally contracted if you play your rugby in Ireland. So, the likes of Aoife Wafer, who plays her rugby in the PWR, isn't centrally contracted. Scotland used to have the same model as Wales, where you could play in the PWR and be centrally contracted, but they seem to have rescinded that. At the same time, we've done it as well. So, yeah. And England,
This,
they have to play in England.
this is where I think they need to not fall foul of doing what others do, like we've done previously, especially on the men's side of the house. We go, well, like Ireland centrally contract, so we'll do that. And New Zealand do it this way, so we must do that. Or South Africa are doing this. All their players are allowed to go all over the world. Blah 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 blah. Well, surely there must be a little bit of leeway now to maybe try both, see what works. Can
Yeah.
we? Can you centrally contract people for a season and then see how that goes, or is that better for us then at the end of their term? Should we have a look at doing it at the club level or whatever it may be,
Mm.
just to make sure it's right for Wales, because it's not a one size fits all thing, is it?
It's quite interesting you say that because actually Ireland does seem to be regressing closer to what Wales did, and Australia sort of regressing closer to Wales in terms of their cap rules and foreign player rules.
Yeah.
That's another thing. The thing I was thinking of is so I can see this being quite a double-edged thing with the Welsh internationals coming back to Wales because obviously that's going to make Gwali and Brithon stronger, but at
Yeah.
the same time, is it going to limit development from the youngsters? Because we still have it doesn't fix the issue that there's nothing
We
really
have
between.
nothing
the
underneath.
Yeah, you've got a Premiership that doesn't really work because of what's it, there's 7 teams and they can't raise a side half the time, and then all the other pathways are a bit shonky.
And a
I'm
lot
going to
of
say shonky to be polite.
with the Premiership as well, it's like a lot. It's very, very rare that one of those players actually makes it into the Celtic Challenge. A lot of the Celtic Challenge players are players who've come through the PWR development system or they're coming through Cardiff Met. They're very, very rarely like Prem players. So I want them to come back and I want the players to be playing in Wales and, that everything's managed properly and we get people, I think one of the reasons why the ticket sales are so bad is we don't, apart from Gwalia and Brithon, which isn't advertised properly, there's no real women's rugby that you can go and watch in Wales apart from internationals, which I don't think helps. That league needs to be built up properly so that people are interested and that, the game develops. But there is nothing underneath the Celtic Challenge, and that needs to be fixed because a lot of the Celtic Challenge girls up in Scotland, they're playing domestic rugby, they're playing for Stirling, they're playing for Corstorphone, whatever. In out in Ireland, they're playing provincial rugby, they're playing AIL as well. So if our players come back and they're playing Celtic Challenge, it's not quite enough rugby. So.
Can I just go back to URC and the others? Obviously, we've got 3 teams now who have signed PRA 25. Are you concerned at all that Scarlets are yet to sign?
It it's a weird. I understand why they haven't signed it, and I understand why the Ospreys held out on signing it, and I understand the back and forth that went on. I don't necessarily know if it reflects well on us, and I think if the WRU actually are legally able to make a case to go down to 3, yeah, it makes sense to cut the team that hasn't signed it. I think potentially the Scarlets are banking on it's going to be such a legal nightmare. It's going to be tricky to move on from. But
Yeah.
it doesn't fill me with hope. But
What?
nothing the WRU does fills me with hope.
Why would the organisation not sign it now, though?
But this is it. But then I also think like at this point, if we do sign it, what good is it going to do us?
It'll bring a lot of money, Hattie. There's a lot of rumours that we're going to be signing some players soon to strengthen our squad. From last, it's going to be an extra about 1.5 million plus for player recruitment. And I know it's
Mm.
late in the season, but there's an awful lot of players out there at the moment looking for jobs. Now, they might not be the best players, but they can certainly strengthen squads. And that's why I'm very hopeful that the Ospreys will be able to do that. And there'll be some further announcements over the next couple of weeks. So I would, if it was the Ospreys, I'll be honest with you, I'd be quite concerned just on the player recruitment front.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what
To
are
be honest,
Scots going to do with the extra money? Just buy another fullback.
Yeah, but
I,
it's about replacing. It's not about replacing what you've lost. It's about adding to what you've got in a way, because there's enough there. It needs to add into, and that 1 point however many million would make a difference.
but then also isn't like the reason why teams weren't signing the PRA is how much control they then have to give over to the WRU.
Well,
Wasn't that the
well,
hurdle?
it was the hurdle, but obviously we'll see how that plays out. I think Steve Tandy's done a good job in that respect. He's engaged very well with the four teams and the players outside of Wales as well. That's come through loud and clear. He's paid visits to players who are playing in the English Prem. Uh, do you know, or does anybody know? Does Hugh and anybody know? What's a house of luxury? Simon Kozlowski and Kirsty Jane. Kirsty Jane Baker? Are they involved? Have they put any money into the Scarlets?
I haven't heard anything, but all I have heard or have been told is that basically the like official thought process is the legal process of going down to three is going to be such a minefield, and they would rather be in a better bargaining position, which they believe is not signing it.
I'm also picking up a lot of rumours there are financial difficulties with the Scarlets.
But then there's also rumours that there's financial difficulties with all the teams. Like, I think we're picking up on rumours because
I
it
was going to say,
fits a
there's no rumours of
narrative.
Cardiff. We're quite firmly in the shit.
Like every rugby team is in the financial shitter. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not.
Yeah, Nick, just to flip it back, are you a little bit annoyed that you've effectively wasted a season?
Oh, I've said this, before. I don't know what we've gained by dragging it out. Other than
Nothing.
we could have been in a position where, who knows, we could have kept Jack Walsh. I'm sure we'll bring somebody in to replace him, but I'm not convinced Jack Walsh particularly would have wanted to go if we could have made a decent offer. I think Jack, and certainly Jack Morgan, maybe Derby was slightly different. He maybe fancied a change, but Jack Morgan's a local boy, and I'm convinced he wouldn't have gone if we could have made a better offer, or there was more security that at least the 2 years of his next contract he could fulfil with the Ospreys.
Yeah, it was just can kicking for me. In the end, it looks like it's just you've kicked it down the road. Could have even been in St. Helens by now.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, exactly.
seems like a bit of a waste. I think it's a good move, and I think it's the right move. I'd be interested to see what happens down west now because out, unfortunately now I think Scar's entered into a position whereby the uncertainty is now down to one
Mhm.
team,
Mm.
not two, or three if you include Cardiff in that because of all the stuff that's gone on with the takeover and whatnot. But that's all been put to bed now, and everybody knows it's status quo for 2 years,
Mhm.
apart from one,
Yeah,
and that would be
I
a
do see it. I
concern.
think it's also traditionally we have been quite stubborn when
No,
there's
I'm
been
not having it.
Really?
when there's been changes, and up until this point, it's not really backfired on us. Um,
You
so
mean like keeping a head coach who clearly seems out of his depth and won't learn from his mistakes?
yeah, like
On that front, though, right? You think about it now from financial perspective. How long's Dwayne Peel's contract?
yeah, but well, I
What I
don't think we're
mean,
going to get rid of him.
what I'm getting at is whether he was the right man or not. It's the affordability of getting rid of him. If you're going to sack him, you're going to have to pay him off the rest of his, or at least a percentage of his contract. It might cost you 300 to 500 grand. I don't know. Clearly, that's unaffordable. So therefore, maybe the cheaper option was to bring Nigel back in to fulfill his role, rather than culling it. Add in it was cheaper than culling, if that makes sense. I don't,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
I'm speculating here, but from the outside looking in, maybe that's a little bit the case. I don't know. Look, I hope it gets resolved, and I hope that. I suppose we've seen the biggest drop off from. I know we're going to review now, but from Parker Scarlets, I think that's been the biggest drop off this season, isn't it? The players that you lost, we spoke about this at the start of the year. They've not been replaced, and it's been a tough season, I suppose. Because am I right in saying you finished best of the Welsh teams last season in the finishing in the playoffs? Yeah, we would have done Champions Cup. Yeah, so to go from the best down towards loitering down the bottom, it's tough. I hope it gets resolved quickly.
And speaking of season reviews, as we have reached the end of the season, all the teams are out. I'm not going to go into Cardiff's quarter-final loss. That the Cardiff Central boys have all done that. Also, all the individual pods have done season reviews now. So I know for a fact the Dragons that have Cardiff has started. They're going to do another one, which I think is going to be more about squad for next year, coming up the next week or two. Guessing Saucepans finally pulled out their hole and did that.
Believe so.
Right. So please do check those out. Also, if you really interested in rugby, check out our sister channel, Global Game Line, where we've got Irish pods. So the Interpro show are releasing dedicated episodes for each province, introducing the new presenters for all their new subsidiary podcasts when they come through. A bit of an animal. We've also been recording a lot. Women's Treehouse is wound down for a bit, but I imagine something will spur them into motion sooner
There'll
or
be
later.
some sort of sexism scandal at some point, and we'll have to crawl out of a hole.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's in West Ham, but then that's football, so it's not really in your remit.
Yeah, wrong shaped ball.
Had that problem before.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate myself. Anyway, so you've got all those. Check them out, and if you're enjoying what you've been listening to, please like, subscribe. But first of all, we're going to start off with West teams, then we'll do East teams later. Depending on how long these conversations go, we may have a little break. We may break and split the episode up a bit. So we're going to start off with the aforementioned best team, the Westerist Besterist team from last season with the Scarlets. Hattie, do you want to give us a rundown? What you think went right? What went wrong? What are you looking forward to next season, Jane?
Well, I feel like I can skip over. What I've actually labelled it is what went less bad, what went really bad, and how we can be less bad next season. Which I think is more fair of how the season actually went. So what went less bad? I feel our line out was not that bad. I think it was creative at times. We did give away quite a few penalties at the line out. 12, which I think was the most. Running theme, as you will see. Oh no, Connacht was equal. That was less bad. Also less bad. Carwyn Leggett-Jones played really well in the little bits and pieces that we've seen. I think I'll talk about this a bit later, but seeing what he does next season, but not pushing him too hard will be interesting. Fletcher Anderson was obviously our highlight of the season. He was one of those signings where people are like, why are you signing a guy from New Zealand that's barely played and he's not Welsh qualified, why have we done this? Turns out, excellent, great player. He played almost every minute, of the games that he was eligible for. He carried really hard. He ended up captaining the team at the end of the season. He was players' player. He was supporters' player. He was coaches' player, I think. Actually, no, I think he missed one of it, but he just had like every award under the sun. He was excellent. Sam Costello, when he wasn't injured, was quite good. However, he did spend most of the season injured. And Eddie James was another highlight. Although, again, spent quite a bit of the season injured, flicked between 12 and 13. So it does take the rating down a little bit. What went really badly? We didn't know that rugby is an 80-minute game, and frequently only turned up for about 20. We just had too many penalties, too many cards. Specifically, because I know people are going to ask, 18 yellow cards, which was the most. 1 red card, not the most. Penalties conceded, 215, which was the most. Scrum offences, 50, which actually isn't that bad. Line-out offences, 12, which was joint topped. Again, not great. And yes, people are going to blame Tame Plumtree. Tame Plumtree did have a lot of penalties. He did have cards. However, it was really all of our back row. Jared Taylor, again, I think had more cards and more pens than Tame Plumtree. We were just penalty magnets, brain fart after brain fart. I don't necessarily think that we had like massive incidences of foul play. It was just stupidity most of the time. And repeat infringements. A lot of Tame Plumtree's cards come from repeat infringements, and he's the one that gets nailed for it. It's not an excuse, but if you looked at what he gets carded for, it tends to be that. It's just incredibly frustrating to watch it over and over and over again. We had it last season where our discipline wasn't great, but we kind of got away with it because our attack was really good. That didn't happen this season. We played Joe Hawkins at 10 a lot. Joe Hawkins is not a 10. We should really stop doing that. It's not great. His kicking game's not good. No, I don't think that helped with the 80-minute team issue at all. But we were having to play Joe Hawkins at 10 because our development of our players is so bad. So yes, we've got Harwin Leggett-Jones coming through, but we otherwise just really have Sam Costello, and that's it at 10. We've got players that are playing, who are in our academy system, or those players who are playing SRC and they're playing a little bit for the Scarlets. Or we have players, within that remit who said that they're there. They're not really getting enough time to play directly for the Scarlets. They're really just kind of wasting away in the SRC. And then you have players like Carwyn Tuipulotu who go off and play in Pro 14 every week, in Top 14 every week. Like, how do you have a player that goes from, he wasn't good enough apparently to play for the Scarlets, wasn't being developed properly there, plays like 2 games for Saracens, and then goes off and plays in France in the top league. We keep seeming to do shit like that, and it's really frustrating. And then again, this might change because we do seem to be having some changes in the coaching team, but we have no clear identity. We've got coaches who were, defence, and then their attack, and then their attack, and then the defence. I had to look, and we've got I think we've got a forwards coach, a contact area coach, and a defence coach, but we don't have a dedicated backs or attack coach. Oh, and we've got a scrum coach. So we've got 4 of our coaching positions are taken up primarily by forward things / defence, and we've got no backs or attack coach.
Well, this is clearly the issue that Dwayne Peel was having, because he would have had to have been doing all the planning, or like we were saying about Tandy doing everything else that the head coach needs to do, all the media stuff, all the rest of it, having his fingers in all the pies, and then probably doing all the attack stuff as well then.
Yeah. And I obviously I'm not a coach, so I can't really say. To me, it doesn't really make that much sense to have a forwards coach, a contact area coach, a defence coach, and a scrum coach, but no backs or attack coach. Like like logically, yes, you should have all of them if you're playing professional rugby and it's a top level team, but surely you would drop one of those to have a backs or attack.
No, I don't think you can.
Wait.
Because if your scrum doesn't function, you don't win the ball.
Yeah, but
If
we've
you,
got a forwards coach.
yeah, but he's dealing with would be dealing with line outs, a kick off reception, you know, all
Yeah,
your
I understand that they're like all vital. I do get it, but I also think this does explain why our backs and our attack is so poor.
Oh yeah, and I'm not saying otherwise. I agree. You can't drop one. What you needed to do is probably no coincidence really that maybe then the reason why you were better when Nigel Davis came in was because it freed up
Ben Pilter.
to do more on field
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
But the problem is that coincided with Sam Costello getting injured. So then we're playing Joe Hawkins at 10.
Yeah, oh, it's been a perfect
Yeah.
storm. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no doubt.
So yeah.
Once again, I keep saying this. Scarlets need to get an experienced 10 in, even if it's as a player coach, because Peel, it was a scrum half. He's a great scrum half, but he doesn't know how to develop a young 10 and to get a 10 to develop the attack. Like Scarlets look like when Sam Costello's playing, it looks like he's running the attack and he's designing it, he's calling it, which is what you want a good 10 to do. But then Joe Hawkins has not been brought up to do that. He's probably played a bit of 10 here and there. Exeter, he was, he left. Part of the reason he left the Ospreys was because he kind of wanted to play a bit of 10 and 12. He wasn't also getting a lot of game time because the way the Ospreys were attacking at the time didn't really facilitate a playmaking 12. And he's told he'd get a much better experience in Exeter. Good Scarlets. And he's not really getting development. He's having to sort of learn it all as he goes. And this is why. So there's a room. He's probably not the right 10 for this, but there's a rumor of Jared Evans being told by the Wales camp they really want him to come back, but he wants to come to Cardiff. And you're thinking, literally any of the other three regions would be better off with Jared Evans than Cardiff, who already have Callum Sheedy, Johan Lodenbrook. Then we have two very young fly halves who are still struggling to get time in.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the rumours are that we're going to sign Jared Evans and then Ospreys are going to sign Harry Wild on loan. I was like, well, they don't need a young 10. They need a backup for Dan Edwards. This is where actually maybe with the WRU control it might actually be quite helpful because then regions might get out of their own way and sign what they need. Do they need another Kiwi-born fullback?
No.
Or do they need
Which gets me on
10? Do they need do they need a Welsh qualified second row or an extra? Well, saying that actually, your front row stocks in terms of numbers are pretty good, but
it's not bad. So this is where I get into my next season, and I'd like to point out I wrote these notes before we signed yet another fullback, and so on did an interview on Saucepans a couple of weeks ago, and they were able to put an entire backline together of 15s from 9 to 15. That is how many 15s we have. And we've signed another one because of course we have. However, I wrote these notes beforehand, and in the notes I say recruit actual second rows, not hybrids, because we seem to really, really like recruiting a 6 who can also play 4, and then we just end up with a bunch of 4.7s who aren't, there's not enough heft in there, and they're not really that tall, and it's not particularly helpful. We don't really have an issue at the line out, but our scrum and our carrying dirty work, the kind of nasty second row stuff isn't getting done because we've just got very athletic second rows who are really more 6s. We have signed Cuxon, who was decent for us in the few games that he played on loan, although he did get a yellow card when he was with us. So, true Scarlet. However, we have also now signed another fullback, as I said. Why? I don't know. So clearly our recruitment plan is not going how I wanted it to go already. Our other issue has been our attack generally. So next season, I would like us to actually aim to score 4 or more tries, because we basically had no bonus points this year, and that's why we were languishing down the bottom. Clarity in our coaching staff I've kind of already covered, and building our backroom properly. We do obviously have the new defence coach, which should be interesting. Obviously, rugby league defence coaches are quite popular and they have been for like the last 10, 15 years. However, we're getting somebody directly from rugby league. And I don't think he's ever coached rugby union before. So
Who is it?
it's from St Helens. It's Eamon O'Carroll.
Yeah,
Well, all I'll say to you on that is Sean Edwards came straight from league into Wasps.
Yeah.
My
So
tackles were less well refereed back then.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's not
I think my concern with
same in
that,
league now as well. You
I
know, you
think my
can't put
concern,
chin shots in.
my concern with that is, as I alluded to in the news, he's not available to the end of St Helens this season, and I'm not a rugby league fan. But does if St Helens do quite well, that could take you to sort of end of September. When do they have the grand final? Beginning of October. So a lot of the work is done by coaches over the summer, where they're going to have some agreement where he can come down to run sessions. I don't know.
Yeah.
That one.
Their last game of the season, if they don't make the playoffs, is the 11th of September.
Okay.
They'll make the
Okay.
playoffs though. It's St Helens.
Yeah.
You know,
So
and I agree. And this is where I suppose you think, typical, kind of typical union or Welsh rugby is now. You go like on the face of it, that seems like a really exciting, or to me it does. Go, what a brilliant,
out
you
of
know,
the box
out the
as
box,
well.
forward thinking, fresh look at it. Yeah, great. And
And we
then
can't afford to buy him out of the contract.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where I come back to. This is lots of these things. This is all cash related. You know, we
Yeah.
can't afford an attack coach as such, hence why Peel's being spread so thinly. You can't, the 10 situation, that's cash related. You can't afford to buy someone out of a contract. You know, he's not going to be on loads and loads of money at St. Helens, is he? I'm not saying,
No.
again, it's not a couple it's going to be a few $100,000 probably, but again,
No.
they just can't afford to do it.
So final 2 points for next season. I'd like to see us develop our youth properly. Instead of just expecting them to develop on their own with no pushing, and then they end up leaving, and then when they leave, they, as I alluded to before, they end up doing really, really well. Titcombe, Tuipulotu, etc. We run the risk of that happening with the likes of a Carwyn Leggett Jones or some of our centres as well. So it is a concern. And then finally, this is more of a me thing. Something I've seen, which I'm going to give the Dragons a compliment for, is that in their end of season bits and pieces, they've been really including Gwalia. So their awards night, they had a best Gwalia player of the season. They've been doing like best Gwalia try of the season, things like that. Whereas I know for Brithon, they held their own separate awards night, separate to the Scarlets. And there's not really been much of a crossover there. I'd like to see a Scarlets Brithon double header in the same way I'd like to see a Gwalia Dragons double header next season, and just be more of a like one club approach, even if the names are different. Because I thought it was cool to see Molly Reardon get the award with all the
I saw
Dragons
that.
lot. Yeah.
It was good. I think the Dragons have done well off the field this year.
But we'll have a bit more talk about Dragons later. Just wanted to pick up because you're talking about like scoring more tries, scoring more points. Actually, of the four Welsh sides, the Scarlets scored the second most points on average per game.
Yeah, problem is we might score them on average, but
I
we're
was
not
about to
getting
add-
any bloody bonus points. That's the
You
bloody
might-
problem.
The problem is it's still only about 20. It's still only 20 points. And the Ospreys are only slightly better with 21 points, and you both concede 25 points a game, which I think is a bigger issue. Tries wise, yeah, it's not good. None of the Welsh sides average a bonus point a game. Cardiff are just under 3 tries, Dragons well under 3, Ospreys exactly 3, Scarlets. Yeah. So I think part of the thing is you kick a lot of penalties.
We kick a lot of I think we're like fourth on kicks or something in the league. Like,
Yeah.
it's not bad, but we just don't score tries, and therefore we don't get bonus points. So we get nothing out of a game.
Yeah, you scored 3 bonus points and conceded 12,
But
which is
then,
it's not great.
when you're conceding 215 penalties,
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, discipline, as I said, and I think a lot of Scarlets is, basically they give away some stupid penalties and that's it, and they get into ruts and set piece penalties as well, particularly at
It,
scrum time. If some of
we
your
actually,
props seem to get the ire of the ref and then don't try and change, or they don't get changed soon enough.
but we don't actually have that many scrum penalties compared. Like it's not low, but like the Dragons and Leinster are both worse than us.
I
Um,
th I think for that though, I think with Scarlets is when they get penalties at the
it's
scrum,
like one
they
after
get
another,
lots in a game, and that's where you went, and it's the compounding,
and
and
then
that's
and then they get a yellow. Yeah, I, it's just really frustrating. Do you know what? If we were a really dirty team that shoulder barges to the head and like spear tackles, and that's what we were getting our penalties and our cards for, I'd like, yeah, I understand it, but it's just stupidity. Like it's just absolutely moronic behaviour.
yeah, it's
It's just
not
like
quite the
being
strongest.
off. It's just being offside, or like it's just stupid. So yeah, basically,
And
hopefully next year we're less shit.
we're going to move slightly with that. We're going to move slightly further east to a team who's a lot further at the table. Nick Ospreys,
Yeah,
sort of finish mid.
it's a difficult one. If you just want to do perhaps concentrate on the rugby, which obviously that's what we're here to talk about. But I think for the Ospreys in particular, it's been a very, very difficult season. There is a context. Just to remind people, it's been quite a traumatic year for staff and their families. So it sort of must have been quite hard to focus on the rugby.
Yeah, I'd
Uh,
agree with that.
and as a result, I think the players, and in particular Mark Jones, can be quite proud of the way they've conducted themselves. So just to remind people, summer 24 was announced there'd be no move to St Helens. We've already talked about that. Welsh Rugby Union announced their plan after the consultation, to move to 3 teams. And it very quickly became clear those teams would be a team based in the central region, a team in the east, and only one team in the west. So that was bad enough. And then it was, of course, so early in the new year, it was confirmed that the WRU wanted to sell Cardiff to Y11. And even though Y11, of course, the 75% shareholders of the Ospreys, it was said that they would be allowed to own 2 teams. And reassuringly, Mr. Bradley said that we had no problem and we could carry on to the end of the 26-27 season. But then we had well, in fairness to the council, I think the council played this really well. That there was a meeting, if you remember, between the council and Abby Teeny on the Welsh Rugby Union. It was clearly stated that their plan was for a women's team based in Swansea in the Osprey region. The Ospreys didn't have a future as a professional men's team. So obviously that creates quite a lot of angst between the council and the Ospreys and Y11. That seems to have been repaired a little bit. And obviously, we're pleased that there's going to be the redevelopment to St Helens, mainly for community use. The Ospreys will have it apparently on match days and will run out in the week. And it was around about that time, it was also announced, of course, that the YLM bid for Cardiff wasn't going ahead, and they were obviously remaining committed to the Ospreys. And whatever you say about the YLM, I'm not their biggest fans. What they have done is put a lot of money into the Ospreys. We've had their financial release, and I think there was a slight reduction in the loss. But obviously that's been held up by the Y11. So they have actually, and they have done since they've been involved in the Osprey. So I think put around close to 8 million to pay wages and so on.
Sorry to cut in. Is that a level of investment since?
Yeah, but it's about roughly 2 million a year. I think they've been there 4 years now. So 4 2 is around about 8 million.
That's a substantial amount of cash.
Yeah.
It's not to be sniffed at. I don't think 2 million quid a year.
Yeah.
And I suppose there's no return on that at the minute, is there?
No, no. So, if I wanted to concentrate on rugby, I think you've got to be honest. It's been a stagnant season, results wise. I think we've won same as last year. Obviously, we had an additional draw. We went to round 16 in the Challenge Cup and put up a decent performance in Ulster, in Belfast, but ultimately lost that game. So there's been no little progress really on the playing front, and there's been some regression as well, in my view. We didn't score even though I think we might have scored more tries than anybody else in any of the other Welsh teams. We didn't score as many tries as we did last year. Scrum held up very well. There's a bit of a difference, a bit of a step down when some of the more experienced props go off and some of the less experienced come on. But I don't think scrums have been a problem. But our line-out definitely has regressed. Now, the hookers really have been the same that played the previous year. I think I've worked out in the URC this year we lost 48 lineouts, whereas the year before we lost 28. And that's quite a drop off, isn't it? And I know that there's a certain gentleman called Mr. Beard, who isn't the favourite of some people on this podcast, but there is a difference since Adam Beard has not only his own personal contribution to lineouts, but also his organisation. And I think the other one I think must mention is, of course, Justin Tipperick was a very, very secure lineout jumper as well. So maybe it's not desperately down to organisation, as Dan will know and other coaches. Lineouts is quite a complicated facet to the game, but there's definitely been a regression in that. And it also means then maybe there's a link to try scoring because you haven't got confidence you're going to be able to win the ball and launch first phase. And our first phase is not brilliant. I'd like to see a little bit of more invention in that area. We've had a new defence coach in Mr. Tipperick has taken on that role. And by and large, he's done a good job. But we had a couple of blowouts, which were disappointing. I was very disappointed in the performance in Leinster and also the first game, which I think partly that was to do. The Bulls are a good team. And also we didn't have a proper pre-season. So I know we're not talking about the improvements yet, but I really do hope the Ospreys have learned from that and have more than one pre-season game to get those sort of aspects, organisation aspects. The other thing I think is a little bit of a weakness. Dan Edwards offers a lot, but his kicking meters aren't great. That's not something he can improve on. And also we're in the same boat as the Scarlets. So that we now Jack Walsh, who could fill in at 10. I don't think it was his best position. He's gone. We definitely need to recruit an experienced 10 too. And hopefully that will be resolved before the season. Otherwise, that is a great concern. And Dan Edwards played an awful lot of rugby last year. And I don't think you can sustain that long term. And we were just so lucky he didn't get injured. The attack I've alluded to. I think Harley might have asked me in the first home game after we beat Zebra, won that game comfortably. But we only scored the three tries. We didn't get the bonus point. And I think that's been a little bit of a feature for us. We had quite a number of games where we scored 3 tries and won the game, but we couldn't get the bonus points. I think we only got 4 bonus points over the season. So that's certainly an area to improve. So I'd say sort of common themes there would be improve the line out, get more and better, a little bit of meterage and retention of the ball. I think one thing I think Leinster are very good at, I know we're talking about one of the best teams there, is they do kick quite a lot. They do get a lot of meters and they do a lot of retention of the ball. So I think maybe our recruitment has reflected that a little bit in bringing Tom Rogers in, who is good under the high ball. Go back to the coaches, and I'd like to include, I think we've already alluded to the importance of recruitment. Now that's a joint thing, obviously, with the chief exec and the head coach. But our head recruitment is Dan Griffiths. So he's got a really important job now to replacing some of the leavers. If there's a little bit more security given we signed the PRA, there's a little bit of pressure on people like Fussell, Richard Kelly, Tips as well. to see if they can see some improvements in those areas. And ultimately, as Mr. Gander will find out, it all the head coach is responsible for it all, isn't he? So Mark Jones, while has come across very well, I think it's a bit of there is some improvement next year in the financial situation and our stability. I think Mark's got a little bit to prove there as well. Yeah, so ultimately, it'll be interesting to see how things develop and improve. I think our recruitment certainly needs to include an experienced 10 to offer a bit of more of a closing out of games, kicking games, rather than bringing in. Oh, fine to bring this lad from Cardiff on loan if that's because we don't seem to be developing younger 10s as somebody you can fill in, and play the odd game off the bench or play in Europe and so on to give them experience. But we definitely need, more importantly, an experienced 10 to back up Dan Edwards. Want to see some improvements. There's talk that we're going to bring in a more physical 13 because Watkin and Kieran Williams are very good, but I'm just wondering, are they too similar as 12 and 13? Are they both probably better at 12? Boshoff offers something a bit different at 13, but somebody else coming at 13 would be good. I think we need to recruit another line-out option. Lorati had a very good season and was player of the season. I think both coaches and players play the season. Play mainly at 6, but he could be might well go back to second row. I don't mind if we bring in somebody who can run the line out and be a big 6 in his place. So yeah, rugby wise, sort of a mediocre season, but I think you have to, give some, some context to that. Player wise, other than the ones I mentioned, I thought Keane Hardy had a good season. It's nice that some players who hadn't played much the year before played a lot more this year, like Hugh Sutton and Rhys Davies. But conversely, because of injuries, there were fewer appearances than one probably would have hoped for people like Gareth Thomas, Ben Warren, and Morgan Morris. Well, obviously, they made a contribution. Jack Morgan obviously didn't play. He was our club captain, and you could see the difference he made on an individual basis when he came back for the last 5 or 6 games. We've got some big players to make, some cult players going like Daniel Kasende. I thought Phil Cockasinger, who had come in the year before, didn't play an awful lot, had a good year. So it'll be interesting to see who they bring in. Obviously, James Fenders will move on. The players who I thought did well, on top of that, I thought Steph Thomas, in fairness, has really improved. He had a good season. And Ryan Smith, despite what I say about the line, I don't think it's particularly down to him. He's been a good signing. And obviously, given he's Australian, he has availability and he seems to be able to stay fit. So if we can bring in 4 or 5 players, 2 we brought in already, I'm fairly confident we'll do a little bit better next year, but we're still quite way off, I think, from really pushing, certainly, I think that's true of all the Welsh teams deep down, for a top 4 finish.
I got a question for you.
Go on.
You mentioned the line out. Now, how much of a factor do you think Toby Booth is in that as well?
Yeah,
because, sorry, Nick, because I think
sorry.
under Toby Booth is very much set piece orientated, nuts and bolts, right? And I think since Boise's taken over, it's been more about layered attack, trying to score those opportunities. But I think maybe it's moved away, especially in the first part of the season, and moved away from that fundamental. Arguably the set piece is the most important part of the game, because if you don't win the ball, you don't have a platform, you can't score any tries. And I think the more struggled a little bit. And for me, and this is not because of the Adam Beard thing, I think that it's Tipperick that's missed the most. Because whilst Beard may call the line out and so on and so forth, don't underestimate how important it is to have a intelligent rugby player like Justin Tipperick in there to move around that line out. He's fairly light, he's athletic, you can get him up anyway, and he wins. He doesn't lose line out balls. So it's an interesting topic tonight, but I do think the Toby Booth factor has had a little part to play in that as well.
Yeah, as I say, I totally agree, and I'd be interested. As I say, I think the coaching staff now, if there is a bit more stability, and we are able to recruit a few players to replace the ones going of a similar and a hopefully better standard, there will be an expectation given the squad we got, and in certain positions we've got good depth, that really length is not good enough. We should be pushing for a top 8 finish.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree, especially with your sort of history, I suppose, within the competition. So yeah, I'd agree. I don't think it's been a bad season on the whole, though, from the Ospreys. It's still you think the upheaval that you've mentioned. They've been up Bridgend
Mm.
as well. They've been tough to beat up Bridgend. I suppose the reality is when you look at the Leinster, I know it was 60 points, but
Mm.
season was done. The boys were on the beach, weren't they? Season
Yeah.
was done by then. So it's hard to get up for an away fixture in Leinster where they've got everything to play for and you've got nothing to play for. And that
Can I just
result,
ask? Yeah, sorry, Harley. Obviously, as a team that play on, an artificial pitch, 3G, 4G, whatever is there in Cardiff Arms Park, and obviously there are a number of teams who, throughout the URC,
yeah,
uh,
there's loads
who,
now.
do you think does it affect the way your sort of game plan?
I mean, it kind of has to because like the turf's different, so you end up, you don't need long studs, so you can be a bit more
Mm.
mobile with the short studs. You can see it. I think you could see it quite well in the quarter final. Like Azarati was really struggling with scrimmaging. He couldn't get as low as he can on the firmer 4G pitches, and that and his feet were slipping under him all the time on
Mm.
the turf. So that changed it. The way balls bounce could be quite different. So the arms park's quite notorious, particularly when it's wet.
Hmm.
You get some really bad dead zones, so the ball doesn't bounce as you'd expect it to, and that catches teams out. Other some players I wonder if they're worried about like getting the friction burns and stuff, so they go necessarily going as hard into contact.
Mm.
And these professional athletes, I'm sure they give their all, but I know even when we're just training on it and we try and do some contact session, in my head I'm always going, oh, do I really want to go into work next morning with like a nice big rug burn down my face and
Mm.
I
yeah,
think it's similar to what Holly said, but I think you have to play into it. So like if you've got a team that are very, very like you've got a really, really fast backline, or even if you've got very, very mobile forwards, I think actually having artificial surface really benefits them. If you look at like Saracens, for example, especially Saracens women, they're known for blowing away teams and scoring, close to 100 in games because they've got an incredibly fast backline. They do it at home where they've got the synthetic surface. They don't quite manage that when they've got an artificial, they've got a real pitch. The same with like, your Wolfhounds. They've only ever lost on real grass. And I think part of it is because they are not used to running on a regular pitch. They're used to running on artificial. So I think you can play into it if if you train correctly and you realize that the two pitches are different. But yeah, I think it just depends on what you decide to do. But I think the big difference can be with your props. And I think that's potentially why as well one of the many reasons South African teams are so hard to beat at home is that they've got real pitches and some of our Northern Hemisphere players aren't used to it because they're used to playing on artificial.
Yeah.
Dan, anything you want to add to that discussion from a coach's point of view? Because I'm sure you must encounter both real grass and artificial.
Well, yeah, I just think personally, I think the artificial gives you more of a um, what's the word I'm looking for? There's less surprises in it. Obviously depending on the weather, you know that you're gonna have a bounce on it. It's different. There's no wetter or muddier patches on it than there is on other grounds. They generally all level, so you're not playing uphill or downhill or with a bit of a slope and so on and so forth that some of these old school rugby grounds have. Um, and I think it's a definite edge if you play on it week in week out. I got no doubt about it. If you were training on it, if you were playing on it, you get used to being on there. Stability for the kickers with their kicking, with their plant foot, and so on and so forth. Especially compared to a team that doesn't play on one week in week out, I think it's a definite advantage. That would be my opinion, because that's what's going into St. Helens, Nick, yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The
So,
One thing I do want to just give one word of forewarning. Given the Ospreys' typical style of play, and the nearest comparison of going from a grass pitch to a artificial was with Ulster, and they were very much a nine-man rugby, and then occasionally they'd let the Blacks do the thing. It's quite disjointed. They did struggle that first season. They went to a 4G just because just because the forwards just weren't used to how quick that pitch is and how much quicker they had to get to play, to breakdowns and the like. That is something I think Ospreys fans, just bear with the team a little bit because I don't know how long they're going to have had to train on that pitch.
There also
yeah.
is evidence that scientists are looking into about the prevalence of ACL injuries on artificial pitches. So
Yeah, the
that is
problem you have
something
to
to
think with
be.
artificials is that traditionally, I think you want to wear shorter studs on there. But if you look at the forwards, especially the props and the second rows, they still like to wear the big 20-odd mil studs for scrummaging. Well, if that gets stuck in, there's no moving it.
I also
And
think
they
it's.
end up doing these.
Yeah,
I also think that the data is slightly swayed by if you look at football and rugby. Generally, women's teams tend to play more on artificial, and women are more susceptible to ACL injuries. So I think it swings the data slightly.
Mhm.
So I think that's what they're part of what they're looking into is what is actually causing it, whether it's
yeah.
artificial
I,
or
I can't remember the study. I read one a few years ago, and what they found were what their preliminary findings were that you weren't more likely to get any of these injuries on artificial. The problem came as if they weren't fully recovered, and it's the reoccurrence because it's just a little bit less forgiving. But
Yeah.
I mean, Stormers pitch in Cape Town is grass, and I think was it Mohammed for the Bit of an Animal podcast always referring to the turf toe. People get out in Cape Town, so you do have these issues. But I mean, going with Dan's point about points getting stuck is when we go to the Cardiff chat, which is coming up next. Teddy Williams gets caught in that awkward position where he comes down, doesn't quite get his feet planted, and then he gets pulled along, and then that dislocates his foot, and he's
Yep.
basically been out the whole season.
Yeah.
I think so maybe there's an issue where if they're less forgiving. But I mean, I've
And
found
I don't think from a
I
player.
did my MCL on grass from a similar thing of where my foot was planted and I got taken out and my knee went.
I don't think players like them.
No.
They do. You do get a lot of burns from them. You are susceptible to lower limb injuries on them. The game is generally quicker on them, so But the plus side is your game's in theory never going to be rained off, or very rarely.
No.
You can have more community engagement on there because it's not going to mess the pitch up. Whereas if you've got a grass pitch, you've got to be careful who's on there. And I think so that'll be a good thing for down at the Ospreys. Yeah, let's wait and see. I suppose. Hopefully, it'll be a good thing.
Yeah, especially that last point. I remember like hearing everyone saying how great it was to have their team on the pitch at the end of the game, and I'm there just going, "That's just every home game. We get to go on every time. It's brilliant."
unless you're
And the
in a
best things about
wheelchair.
yeah, it's a bit harder with that, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
there's steps up again. It's the ancientness of the ground, and yes, it definitely needs to be sorted. We've had many discussions, Hattie, on how CAP really needs to modernise, but
Oh, look,
that's
I
getting
just
kicked
want
down
to
the
be
CAP.
able to go to the toilet in cap. I'm sorry, I would like to be able to go to the toilet. Is that too much to ask, Carly?
Yes, it took
Apparently.
3 years for me to get hot beverages in the bar under the Southwest Terrace. Thank you.
Believe me, Hattie, if you'd have come to Brewery Field, you wouldn't want to go to the toilets. They're that bad.
It's just
Proper rugby ground.
I know this is mind-boggling to some Welsh rugby people, but women go to rugby matches and they also go to the toilet whilst they're there. So
They do.
functioning toilets would be nice.
Or toilet paper in the case of the Brewery Field.
Well, I think the toilet paper's causing the issue, Nick. So actually,
Maybe that's the reason they didn't put it
B
in.
days. There you go. Wait, CAP. When we get to 2028 and you're finally allowed to break ground and do the things, B days. Solve the issue.
That's a whole podcast on its own.
Yeah, I said I think with that little interlude onto CAP, I think we move swiftly on to the next the next region, East Long, so arguably the one that has had the best season. Um, Commenters, please just feel free chucking in all the money, despite the fact you can demonstrate that we played below the budget of what the PRA allows. But that's by the by. So Cardiff season. So I mean, I thought we'd be better than last season. We were. But I still thought we'd just miss out the playoffs. But we got sixth. And actually, me and a lot of Cardiff fans are actually a bit disappointed we didn't do better. Looking back on the season as a whole, despite the sort of turmoil with Jockey going right at the start, but you look at games like Munster where, you know, if she kicks his goals, we probably should have won that. We outscored them in tries. We actually hold them up quite well at Park. The Scarlets game again, one where we just had so much ball, so many 22 entries and just couldn't score. Yeah, so there, a few disappointing things in that. But for me, the big thing is I quite like seeing Cardiff with a much harder edge. And, instead of us having that characteristic powder puff pack, we're standing up to teams a lot more. It did fall apart a little bit at various times. So New Year's Day against the Ospreys was pretty lackluster for us. Balls and Glasgow games as well, where we just comprehensively beat them, and then in the quarterfinal where we just basically proved that no scrum, no win quite convincingly. There are things to mitigate that. We were without Ted, operating on a very light pack. We only had 4 out and out second rows in our squad, in our senior squad, and Teddy Williams was injured for quite a large portion of it. Didn't help, and at various points, we were looking at Evan Rees. We out in South Africa, we had Evan Rees, who's this back row, in the academy covering. Evan Lloyd had to do duty going back to his old position of 8 off the bench. It made things struggle, but it was great seeing things. I said the big issue for me, I think, was our goal kicking really let us down, and there were a lot of close games we lost where a few more kicks would have helped, or at least given us that gap where we could have been a bit more dominant. So said 33 out of 54 conversions isn't great. We were a bit better on penalties, but we tend to take them as a thing. And yeah, when Jockey left, I think that first block of games, we ended up our attack just basically disappeared. So for the first season in like the whole of the URC, I think we were below 4 tries. At least certainly since Jockey came in, we were below 4 tries on average a game. It did get better as things are coming in, but now rumors are we're losing the other attack coach to Wales now. So that's kind of worrying for us. But then on positives, second on kicks retained, so our kicking game's gotten a lot better. Our kick to compete game's been really good and won us a few games. Individually, huge improvements from Rory Thornton and Jacob Beetham, who I think have been absolutely biblical on that thing. Tane Basham proved me wrong. I wasn't particularly impressed with him when he was coming over from the Dragons, but he was excellent back half the season. James Botham Winfit, excellent again. Didn't get to see as much as Ewan Lloyd as I'd have liked, but he had some good cameos. And having Sebastian for me was our signing of the season. He just did an awful lot to lock out the scrums. I think he scored in every single Welsh derby he played in, which is an impressive feat. I don't think there aren't many players who do that. But yeah, overall, I think that was a great season. Couple of new signings, which I'm quite excited for, particularly I've forgotten his name, the Namibian international. I've been waxing lyrical about him all week, and now I've forgotten his name. But anyway, he's good. That should help with our 13 issues a little bit. I still would like to see us sign a nice another second row, with as we've lost Bendel, and Hugh again, play we missed, and probably another tight head, because as great as it is to have Scott CO, that renowned scrummaging prop. I think our tight head, is definitely, he all looks very knackered by the end of the season, especially with very little trust in Sam Wainwright. Don't know if anyone wants to hop in on there.
What, in terms of your recruitment for the front
Oh,
row?
just of your thoughts of Cardiff season and as a whole.
Okay, so I think that it's been a good year on the whole. I think your home form has seen you home, for want of a better expression. I think Cardiff Arms Park has been a definite fortress. Who only one loss there all season.
Yeah, to the Scarlets.
The
Because to be
Scarlets,
fair,
yeah.
it's more of a home game for them.
Yeah, obviously being so close to Pontcanna.
Although you say that, they should mean it, Jared Evans would be fine because he could live in Cardiff
Yeah,
and come
With all the
down.
with
Yeah.
all the other Scarlets players.
Yeah, be fine.
yeah. And in fairness, going back to that, that Scarlets game, with the amount of ball and 22 entries, etc., you should have had is one that you thrown away. So probably should have been an unbeaten season at Cap. I think, see, I do agree with what you said at the start that you're a little bit disappointed, and I understand why, because you started so well and then it fell off. And I'm wondering whether, and I've mentioned this year before, whether the jockey effect is starting to fade a little bit more and more, and they're reliant on others now to try and keep the attack structure and the sort of feel good factor around Cap going in the same direction. So I'm expecting to see a change in the way Cardiff do things next year, if I'm honest. Um, I'm expecting to see Van Ziel put his own stamp on it rather than sort of go with, I suppose, that there's no point in him reinventing the wheel when he came into the job, was there? Because he went just before the start of the season to jockey. So it'll be interesting to see how you progress. But yeah, I would say it's without a doubt the best season of any of the Welsh regions Champions Cup rugby next season for you. It's just a shame, really, that you ended up with an away quarter final, because if you'd have managed to keep your form up and finish in a position whereby you get a quarter final at Cap, I think you would have snuck it. So, but on the whole, you've got to be pleased with what you had. How do you take it to the next level again now?
Yes, I think that's where like getting some decent last minute recruitment, maybe carry on with raiding Curry Cup, because I think when we signed Tinas, he brought us up a level. Johan Mulder has again just been excellent there. So yeah, I think something a bit more quality there. Our academy's looking pretty good net side now. We sort of was running a bit bare bones, particularly in the forwards, so hopefully they can go through. I get what you mean with Van Zyl stamping his own thing. I think we've already seen it with the way you see the forwards play. Thing I was going to say, you
Yeah,
said,
who's your attack
I
coach now?
hmm?
Who's your attack coach?
That's the problem is we don't have we basically are currently our attack coach. This is the thing that we need to fill. I feel like defense improved. We were, the second or third or fourth best defense on terms of points and tries
Yeah,
conceded. Um, you know, we only conceded 4 try bonus points during the regular season, which is
yeah,
pretty
good.
good going. I think only really Leinster and Glasgow were better than us for that. But I said on the other side of the ball. It's basically we're not scoring enough points. I think we got a little bit better towards the end, but I think we're too reliant on trying to have Liam Belcher try and crash up on a tap penalty, and he's not the player you want really for that. He's brilliant, and he'll give you a nice secure ball for several phases. And when we used a special move, two or three phase move, it worked really well. But when we were just trying to crash up, and we ended, it was almost a waste of possession. We might have been better off just taking the penalty in a lot of these games.
You mentioned the attack coach. When that attack coach comes in, whoever it may be, they're going to have their own philosophy as well. Now, it'll have to come under what Cornel Van Ziel likes, or whatever's pitched to him in interview, because I'm assuming he'll be part of that, or he should be part of that process. Um, so you may end up changing the way that the team plays. You never know. You've had this layered attack, which has been lovely, and but that was jockey stamp, wasn't it? That's if you someone else is coming in, that's likely to change, and then you've got all the internal politics around it as well. Do the players buy into it, and do they like that coach, and so on and so forth. So it'll be tough to ensure that the progress stays the same. Um, and obviously for the sake of Welsh rugby, I hope it does. But let's watch this space.
I think
No, I mean,
I think the one who does deserve credit is Gethin Jenkins, because as you said, Harley, I think he only conceded 4 bonus points against you, which is way lower than the rest of us. So it keeps you in games, doesn't it? Yes, I totally agree. You defend, your attack could do with improving, but you still scored more tries almost as many tries as us. So if they can, it's give and take, isn't it? You're a bit more
That's
adventurous. Yeah, is your defence got to suffer?
yeah, and it'll come down to time. You know, who's dealing with what. Who do you want? Who do you want to come in to take that role?
Honestly, I just quite happily just have I just want Jockey back, but it's one of those things I don't think I've really thought. I thought right towards the end of the season, Johnny Goodridge was coming into his own in the attack role. We're starting to see more of his stamp on things, and it was almost like Matt Sherratt flavored, but with a different twist, and some of his set piece moves were really good. But as I said, the rumors are that Wales are looking to bring him on as like a first phase attack and skills coach, basically
Yeah,
copied his role when he was under Jockey, which I hope doesn't go. I mean, holistically, before as much as I'd love to get a new coach in, I'd quite also like us to have a fully functioning board. And instead of us being, because at the moment we are a subsidiary of the WRU, I'd like us to actually be a functioning subsidiary of the WRU and not have four board members and no one really knows what direction we're going as a club. Because are we driving is anyone driving the commercial revenue? Poor Mike in the communications department, I think he's literally doing all the jobs,
yeah,
including toilet cleaner, which is why they haven't quite got round to Hattie's toilet yet.
yeah.
But I
Sorry,
was in
he is
two
doing.
different areas and both
Yeah,
times.
yeah. Well, if you move, he's going to miss you. This is how it happens. But yeah, I said, I mean, the big thing for me, I'd love to see from Cardiff is to not follow the same trap that happened to the Ospreys and Scarlets in their previous seasons, where they've made the playoffs and then fallen off a cliff, a season or two later. Like if we
Yeah.
can keep those standards, and naively, I'm hoping it's a bit easier for Cardiff because I feel like the thing we needed to learn most was the pragmatism and the physicality and the set piece play, which isn't perfect. We saw it against Stormers that we still have a way to go with that, but we can still get up for games. Again, I think a big part of that is a depth issue, which we all suffer from. But now we're spending a little bit closer to that budget cap. I'm hoping we go those ways. But yeah, our 150th season, whether you debate it or not, then you feel a Cardiff Rugby established
Yeah,
2022 or whatever it was.
2000. Well, yeah, I'll give you 2022. 2003, I'll also give you as well, Mike. But
That was
Cardiff
Cardiff Blues.
RFC's
That was when we
150th
were a
season.
proper European powerhouse.
Good luck to Cardiff RFC in their 150th this year.
Yeah, yeah. So I said, looking forward to the Champions Cup rugby with that. Speaking of attack coach and the Rags, it does make me think there are a lot of rumours about Dan Fish coming. So that'll be interesting for any of the foreign signings we bring in, them trying to understand the proper Cardiff accent.
Accent.
Yeah. But yeah, that was Cardiff. So we're going to move over to the. So we've gone from the top right down to the bottom, which I actually think is cruel that they finished 15th in bottom Welsh region. But Dan, your
Now,
Dragons.
I'm going to bring you up on this because everyone's been saying the Dragons have been the worst Welsh region.
I'm not saying they were the worst Welsh region. I've said they finished in the worst position.
Now, depends on which table you look at because I'm looking at the Welsh Shield table and we're third. Now, of all the games where we've competed against each other, Dragons are third. So you can stick down your pipe and smoke it.
So you've got slightly more of the hubcap.
I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Finished. Yeah, okay, we finished 15th in the URC, but in the league that actually matters because we didn't want to be the worst Welsh region.
But you are the worst Welsh region because you came below us in the league.
No, we're not. We're not. Can't be. We can't be because in the league full of the Welsh teams, we're above you. So
So
everyone
do you know
at
what? I
Scarlets
think
can get back in their box and do one because we did better than you. I'm looking at the table now. What can't speak can't lie. And we got to a semi-final of a European competition.
second tier.
European competition doesn't matter, does it? How did you get on in Europe this year, Hattie?
What in the first tier?
Yeah, how did you get on? How many games did you win?
Well, we didn't win any,
There you go.
but
Anyway, moving on.
people were surprised by how well we did against some of the top teams.
Well, what top teams?
Bristol, the eventual winners,
Well,
Bordeaux.
the team that shipped 90 points at Northampton the other week. Yeah, well done.
We also played Northampton.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we played Poe.
Bordeaux didn't even make the playoffs of the top 14, so come on.
No, but they did win
No.
the
Come on, the Dragons will win that next year because we go one step further. Anyway, so
You know, you don't jump up to the Champions Cup, right?
yeah, we'll get it. Don't you worry. So yeah, officially not the worst Welsh team because in the competition that matters, when Welsh teams played Welsh teams, we finished third on the ladder there.
Can I just come in and fully support this point of view?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I am with Dan on this one. I do feel, and I also feel like it was like really, I felt bad that Dragons finished below Scarlets on that one.
Well,
No, I just feel happy we finished ahead of you, in the Welsh Shield, Cardiff.
Right, so now we've got that.
We were focusing on real games of rugby.
Before-
It's fine.
Before Hattie tries to bully me anymore, but the level of European rugby we
do you
played
know
this
what
year.
you definitely did win in the league, though, overall?
Most draws ever in the URC.
Yeah, well
yeah,
done. Very proud of that.
I
Yeah.
was just about to touch on that. So, look, let's take it from a results perspective. Yeah, we did finish 15th in the league that didn't matter compared to the Welsh Shield. And those 4 draws didn't help us. And I look back at the results and the way that those sort of draws ended up. It was a case really of the Dragons missing out. We didn't earn those draws. They were already there for the taking, if you like. We sort of let it slip away. So those 4 games next year, I would like to see us winning in order to take our sort of position up to the next level. I think that would have took us to 7 wins or something along those lines in the league. So, but nevertheless, I think everyone would agree that the Dragons have been much better this season in the league. We got the monkey off our back in terms of an away win, where we went out to Zebra and won in the league. We also went out there to win in the quarter-final of the Challenge Cup. The Challenge Cup run was good. Most impressive for me, I think, was the away win out at Paris. That came off the back of, I think, 3 or 4 away fixtures, especially where we've been out to South Africa for our South Africa tour as well. So, on the whole, I think in terms of results and overall improved performance, it was much better from Dragons this season. Nevertheless, it was a low bar to start with. You know, we were starting at rock bottom, so there's been definite improvement. There's been definite improvement on the field. So I actually looked at it and I broke the game down into 5 separate areas. Those being, I think, in my opinion, order of importance. Number 1 being the set piece, and I include kickoffs in this, because without the ball you can't play. So if your scrum's poor, no scrum, no win. If your scrum's poor, your lineup's poor, or your kickoff reception is poor, you're not going to win many rugby matches. Secondly, I thought I'd have a little look at the breakdown, attacking and defending, because again, if you can't win the ball or you can't slow the ball down, you're not going to win many rugby matches. Then thirdly, I think the kicking game's important because ultimately you need to play rugby in the right areas of the field. Then fourth on the list comes defence, because you need to be a solid unit. It's all well and good, you know, scoring 4 tries, but if you're conceding 5 every week, you know, you're to coin the phrase, you're pissing into the wind. And lastly, I think the attack element is the cherry on the cake, because you need all those other nuts and bolts in there first to play in the right area of the field, to be a little bit more watertight than you normally are, to have a good set piece to launch from, and be able to win your attacking breakdown quick enough to be able to launch a good attack. So ultimately, that would be the cherry on the cake for me. So, Dragon set piece this season, and feel free to jump in at any point, you guys. Line out was okay. Good in some games, poor in others. Poor to the point where in one fixture, I think we won like 60% of the ball, which is not good enough at all. Scrum, again, there were some areas and some games this season where our scrum was really good, and some where it was poor, especially towards the tail end of the season where we got pushed around a lot. And I think, as everyone sort of alluded to, this is a personnel issue. When we've had Rob Hunt on the field, for example, before, I think he tore his hamstring off the bone in the end, I think, didn't he, Rob? or we had Blimani come over from South Africa as well. Our scrum was much better. It was more solid, and we were actually winning scrum penalties. When we've had to go down to the likes of Jordan Morris playing, for example, and this is no slight on Jordan Morris because he's a young prop. It's tough for young boys to play their trade at this top level. I remember Jordan Morris coming on and playing again down at when we played at Leinster down at Rodney Parade, and he propped against Slimani, who's got 70 odd French caps. What a baptism of fire for the poor fella. And Slimani had RG Snyman scrummaging behind him. So, pick the bones out of that. And I think our lineup was definitely functioned better when the likes of Woodman and Carter played. The rest of the time, it could be a little bit wishy-washy. So, on the whole, for our set piece, I'd probably enter around a C plus for us this year. If I was looking at the mark, maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10. There's definite room for improvement there. However, if you could pick your best pack that would include the likes of Hunt, Carter, Woodman, maybe we're looking at an 8 out of 10. So maybe it's a personnel thing rather than a systems. And the hookers can definitely throw the ball in, Elliot D, so on and so forth. So I'm sitting around a C plus to sort of a B for the set piece area. Maybe a C plus is about right. In terms of our kickoffs, I thought that when we were kicking off to teams, the kicking straight down the middle for someone like Rio to chase is actually a really good tactic because you've got a 50-50 chance of getting the ball back. And if they win it back, it's a really difficult touch finder from the middle of the field. You've got to pick a side, and we generally get a decent gain out of that. However, I think we're still really susceptible on when we're receiving the ball. And what's the saying in coaching circles? You haven't scored a try until you've exited. And I think there's been a number of occasions this year where our kickoff reception has been poor, and it's given teams field position and allowed them to sort of gain entries on us. I think the Cardiff game at Rodney Parade sticks in my mind a little bit for that, whereby kickoff reception was poor. So when you throw that in, we're probably in around a C or C plus all in for the sort of set piece arena. I don't know whether you guys have got anything to add to that.
No, I think that's a very good summary. I think Rob Hunt, going back to Harley's point, I don't know what it is about South Africans, but they certainly bring physicality, and if it's in the front row, you're more or less guaranteed a good signing, even if they're playing at a lower standard. They'll think of Tom Botha. Tom Botha, similar sort of player, be an absolute stalwart for us. I don't know what they do there about developing props, but they certainly can do it, and it just gives you that flexibility then, doesn't it, to bring the younger lads on, and they're also coaching the younger lads and going up against them in training.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So, maybe that's something that the Dragons can look at from a recruitment perspective, because if we can double up with another Rob Hunt, then we're then we're quids in, I suppose. Okay, moving swiftly on. Go on. Oh, sorry, Harley, go on.
So I was just going to go with one more sort of just general with like the Dragons recruitment as a whole. I thought they
paid the electric bill, have I? Oh, well, I don't know.
Yeah, for the listeners, Dan just ended up like the Dark Lord of the Sith, having to turn some lights on.
It was really good as well because his jumper is slightly green, so the green was like glowing, but he was like in the pitch black. He did look like a Scooby-Doo monster.
It was a bit
like they're like bright green and glowing.
Yeah, like the Dragon season, there were some definite bright spots, but there were some dark moments as well.
There were some bright spots which were surprising and unexpected, a bit like the colour of that t-shirt.
Like I said, I mean, because I just want more general point about Dragons recruitment. This is the first season in a while where we've gone. Well, I think actually almost the fact that a lot of people are going, I'm not really that impressed with signing these guys. They've been ditched by Cardiff, whatever, and they, pretty much every single play you signed last season has added something.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I'll come on.
And I think that's the important thing.
Towards the end, I agree. Okay, breakdown. Defensively, I think we've done well this year at the breakdown. We've had some good returns at turnover, and I think it's because of the way McLeod sets the defence up to get two in the tackle. We want time in that tackle. Ben Carter particularly is good at holding people up along with Woodman to give us that opportunity to kind of get back on the ball. The likes of Harry Beddle's really impressed me over the ball this year, and Thomas Young. I think they've both added, again, you mentioned signings, they've been two good signings for us. I think Harry Beddle was expected to play most of his rugby at Ebbw this year, but has clearly shown that he's able to step up, and I would say he's in that bracket of being a defensive machine and a breakdown specialist, really, especially due to his size and the way that he's made up. So breakdown element, I would say, especially when we haven't got the ball, is and we've come up with key turnovers on our line as well when we've been defending deep in the red zone at times. The likes of Brody Coughlin's good for a turnover as well. So and Rodrigo Martinez as well for a loose head. I think he turns up with a couple of turnovers every now and again, and they're really important ones. So I think I'd be hovering around a B for our sort of defensive breakdown. I think we do some good work there. In terms of our attacking breakdown, I think there's a couple of factors to this. I think it is personnel driven, because when we have certain ball carriers sort of engaging on that first collision, the likes of Wainwright, the likes of the General, Rob Hunt was good at it as well, and Brody Coughlin. When they carry the ball, they're big physical ball carriers. They're able to win that initial collision. It makes our ball a little bit quicker. I think we struggle when the likes of Beddle have been carrying. At times, your Ben Carter has been carrying at times. I'm not saying he's not a good ball carrier, but I just think that it slows everything up a little bit for us, and there needs to be a little bit more detail in and around the way that we tackle the tackler a little bit earlier. We try and find the floor a little bit quicker rather than trying to wrestle for extra yardage, because we're not all Aaron Wainwright. So when it comes to our sort of attacking breakdown, again, I think we're around the C. We concede a lot of turnovers this season. We've conceded 38 turnovers at the ruck, where people have just pilfered the ball off us. That's not good enough, and I think our detail, sometimes we're knocking the ball on the floor and so on and so forth. With the way that we've carried the ball into contact, needs a little bit of work around it. But again, on the whole, we have been better in that area this season. Everything's been a little bit improved. So I was hovering around a C plus again, sort of all in for our breakdown work. We've done enough in that area to win games. But next season, I don't think we can be so reliant on just one or two ball carriers winning the game line for us. That in order to create lightning quick ball, we need that ruck work in attack to be tightened up a little bit. Anyone got anything to add to that?
No, I think I think it's just a general issue with a lot of the Welsh sides, is that we all seem to have one or two good ball carriers, but backing up to past third, fourth phase, it's an issue without having some clever interplay or just very efficient ruck cleaning.
And I think the breakdown, and when I watched when we did a bit on Wales as well in the sort of in the Six Nations, I think that collision zone is a problem for us, isn't it? I think we need to do more work in winning collisions earlier, doubling up those collisions to create 2v1 or 3v2 collisions would do us a world of good. So our kicking game, obviously we need to play rugby in the right areas, and I looked at our kicking stats, and we kicked in play 458 times in play. When you look at the kicking stats, and I'm using Rugby Pass for this, for anyone who's interested in having a look, and that sees us outside of the top 5. And I'm not surprised, therefore, that we're sort of in the position that we are, because clearly we haven't won enough kicking battles, and it's not seen us play rugby in the right area enough. And I do think that that's been problematic for the Dragons this season, and it's a little bit of game management and kicking game in that I think we overplay in the middle third of the field. Angus O'Brien's got a fantastic boot on him. Tinas can tackle as well, can kick as well, and has shown that he has. And our box kicking game has generally been okay, but maybe it's more of a game management thing than a kicking strategy. But I think we've overdone it in the middle of the field. I think we need more red zone entries. We need to play more down in the opposition's sort of final third in order to get more return from our attack. And I think that's been problematic for us this season. Nevertheless, there's been times where I think Angus O'Brien's kicking game actually has been one of his strong points. He's got a howitzer of a boot. And whilst he is prone to a couple of errors, I look at the Montpellier semi-final where he sort of kicked the ball out on the full once or twice. There's missed touches. He's also been, his kicking game, the crossfield kick for Rio to score out in South Africa was pinpoint accurate. So we have got the ability to kick the ball. We have got some good kickers of the ball. Maybe not enough of them. Maybe that's what we need to look at, helping an Iron Owen out with his kicking game in at 12 to give us that extra relief in and around the 10 slot. But I think our kicking game needs to be improved. The fact that Cardiff are top of that and only lost once at home, Leinster a second and Storm as a third. They're all playoff teams, as are the Lions. So yeah, I think our kicking game needs to be improved, and I was settling in and around a C on that. But I'm debating whether it's a game management thing or a kick in. But I suppose they sort of go hand in glove, in that we've overplayed a little bit in the middle third. That would be my opinion on that. What do you guys think?
I think with
Yeah,
sorry, Nick, I was just gonna say I
no,
think with any of the teams, and I think with the Dragons, maybe because they especially haven't had the best reputation, and it was always, they only ever had like one or two players in the Welsh squad and whatever. There's just no real depth, or you might have one or two players that really, really stand out, and your other players just aren't quite meeting that level. And so as long as you've got it seems with a lot of the Welsh teams, it's let's build a 23 that are serviceable at that level rather than having any competition for those spots. Whereas you look at out in Leinster, for example, Kira Bevan's is making an appearance here. They want, they've got competition for their loose head spot. They've got competition for their 9 spot. They've got competition for their 12, for their 13. And we just don't really seem to have that. I think the Dragons specifically don't necessarily have that in some of their positions.
Yeah, well, I've been quite vocal in saying that I think we've struggled for depth, and that's probably right. We haven't had another fly half to come in as well. It's only been Tina, so maybe a different game manager would improve our kicking strategy as well. But overall, I've sort of settled in and around a kind of a C on that. So moving on to our defence. At the start of the season, I thought our defence was quite ropey. I thought we were too passive. I thought we sat off teams. However, I think our defence has generally improved as the season's gone on. Dale McLeod's obviously taken a little bit of time to imprint what he wants on a team. The boys have clearly bought into it, and on the whole, I think we've done a decent job defensively. Again, you look back and we conceded 70 out in Benetton. The Perpignan game was poor. But I think when I've reflected and looked back at some of the tries, it's personnel dependent, and I think they're individual errors rather than system errors. The system's not a problem. It's been some, we've had a bit of a brain fart or we've got tired. But, we sit fourth in tackles completed for the entire URC. I think Ben Carter was up there with, tackler of the competition. And testament to the boys' hard work is we've actually completed 90% of our tackles this season, which I think is a pretty good return, 9 out of every 10 tackles. So what would have started off at a C minus for me, I think we've actually worked our way up to sort of a B or a B plus in terms of our defence this year. We've definitely been harder to beat, especially when we've got the right people on the field. Carter, Woodman, Thomas Young, Aaron Wainwright, Martinez is good defensively. Any of the hookers that have come in have done a good job for us. Rob Hunt, when we have that physicality within our pack, and Iron Owen superb defensively. Same with Angus O'Brien at full back. I think and Tinas hits like a back rower. So I think that on the whole our defence has improved, and we've got better. 124 dominant tackles within that as well. So yeah. I'm pleased with the way our defence is going, and I think it's likely to improve again for next season. It'll be recruitment will dictate that, but again, if we could put our best 15, if we had a cup final 15 or 23 out every week, I think we'd be a difficult team to chip away at. So yeah, on the whole, I think we've been okay defensively, and it's definitely improved as the season has gone on. In terms of our attack, last element, this is where it kind of gets a bit wishy-washy for me. I think I would say everyone now can see that the Dragons have got more of an identity than we've ever had in attack. I think we try to play to an edge, but sometimes we do overplay. And there were some stats that kind of stood out to me where that have shown our struggles really, I think, from in terms of attack. So if my maths is right, we've averaged around 2.5 tries a game, which is nowhere near good enough. And a lot of those tries come from close in. Our line-up maul has been good. And we also have scored as well from a couple of strike plays from scrum and line-out as well, which have been good. When was the last time that you can say, and I'll open this up to the floor now, that you've watched the Dragons take a ball on a halfway line, have a starter play, get to an edge, and then go 7, 8 phases, winning gain line to eventually score in the opposite corner through phase play, through attack? I can't really remember that happening for us. Which is why, again, is our kicking game is so important, because if we can't get in, we don't get over. Overplaying in the middle third, I don't think we've got the ability to break teams from that middle third of our kicking. Therefore, our kicking game's got to be better. And I look back at when we played Cardiff at home, I thought our kicking game was really, really poor that day. Teen's kicking was poor. Our kicking game was poor. Therefore, we couldn't get in, and we didn't have any attack to go with it. We couldn't break teams down. And another couple of stats on that front is that we've only had 65 clean breaks this season. That's less than Zebra, who had 67 and finished below us in the less important league. And when you compare us with the top two teams, Glasgow and Bulls, I think, were the top two teams, or maybe Leinster. Anyway, I've gone Glasgow and Bulls. Glasgow 127 clean breaks, Bulls 137. I think that shows the difference in attack. We've only beaten 337 defenders this season, which again is one of the lowest in the league. And the most standout stat to me of the entire season in terms of our attack, and this must make us so easy to defend against, is this season we offloaded the ball 50 times in attack, 5-0. Sounds quite a lot, but when you think we played how many games? 18 games plus how many in the Challenge Cup? We were probably up to 25 games this season. What's that? 2 offloads a game in attack. When you compare that with Glasgow, 128 attacking offloads. The Bulls, 178. Zebra finished bottom of the log, 124. Now, to me, that makes you one-dimensional. If you map the Dragons' attack, you know the way they're going to play. If I was coaching against the Dragons, I'd let them have the ball in the middle of the field. We're going to be able to map them, and they'll want to try and go multi-phase and end up kicking the ball back to us, probably not on their terms. So this is where I think that we've struggled a little bit, and it's difficult for me to criticise, because where I think we were last season, we're much improved. We have got some strike runners in there. When Finney and Easy gets on the ball, we're good. But I think those couple of stats there that I've just spoken about kind of sums up where we are in terms of our attack. Now, if this season is the baseline for us, and next year we end up with sort of 120, 130 offloads, with 500 defenders beaten, and we're into the hundreds in terms of clean breaks, then I'd say it's an improvement. But this has to be the baseline for the Dragons this year, before we look to improve. So overall, I think our attack's probably been around a D+, because it is better, but it's still not been great. And therefore, overall, I've sort of settled on a C+ for the Dragons this season, I would say, if I was marking their work. Much improved on last season. Still plenty of room for improvement. Game management and attack is where I would be looking to improve most of all, along with our attacking breakdown. And then it's just a personnel thing, I think, for set piece. So that's where I am with the Dragon season. Honourable mentions to Angus O'Brien, Aneurin Owen, Rob Hunt, Finney and Isi, Thomas Young. I think they've been outstanding for us this season, and Aaron Wainwright, what a servant of the club. He'll be irreplaceable for us. Then the young guns, the likes of Harry Beddle, Shea Hope, I think, and Ryan Woodman have shown really well this year. Tinas DeBee has been good for us, but he needs support. And I think Rio's back to his best as well. So there's a lot of boys there that have put in some good work. I think the body of work on the whole has been really good. We're going to lose the likes of Lids and Patchell to different coaching jobs. I hope they are replaced, and I hope we improve our coaching ticket in and around that. Do we need more in there? I think in terms of our recruitment at the moment, the 3 signings that we've announced, I think they'll be good for the Dragons, especially the boy coming in at number 9. We're not going to place Aaron Wainwright. He's one of a kind for us. So don't even think about replacing him like for like. It's how we sort of set up life after Aaron Wainwright. And I've had a little look at the fixture list for next season, and it's a tough second half of the year for the Dragons. So we need to go all out in that first block. I think all our derbies are kind of in that first half of the season. So yeah, that's my little roundup for the Dragons, who are officially the 3rd best team in Wales. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Very, very comprehensive, and I think that will show all the listeners the difference between someone who's doing this for a living and 3 people who are doing it just because it's fun. And occasionally we get 3 cases of beer.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's I think we can safely say we've put this season to bed now. Obviously, we do have the summer internationals coming up, and I imagine we'll throw out our usual pods. It may be slightly different formats. Obviously, Nick and Dan won't be around. They might be around, depending on availability. There will be a bit of shake-up. You might see different members of the WRRAP family stepping in at various points whilst we
But
all
you're stuck with me and Harley. That's the bad news that we're trying to cover.
I mean,
up
the
here.
first the preview for the Barbars game, I'm not here, so that doesn't work. It'll just be Hattie. Hattie's just going to go on hour-long rants
about how incredibly stupid the whatever of the women's game was. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yep. Anyway, so with that, Dan did touch along the fixtures. I have many, many comments about that, but I think we'll save those for the pre-season previews, which will be coming up. My big issue is that Scarlet's derby to start and finish is a bit weird, and basically the whole business end of the Welsh Shield to be done by around about New Year's just seems mad to me. But not as bad as the South African sides who have 6 consecutive rounds of derby. Oh, it's close enough, especially when they start rearranging the fixtures. I think they'll effectively end up with 6 consecutive derby rounds. It's either Dragons or Benetton who do have 6 consecutive rounds of derbies. It's mad.
Yeah, but the Italian
there'll be gaps
derbies
with autumn
aren't really
internationals and
derbies,
stuff.
though, are they?
Yeah, no, but it's still
Is
weird.
Benetton and Edinburgh a derby?
Depends whether Edinburghs are at home or away, and whether or not they've decided they are a rugby team or a band of apes. That's with the way they've been playing. Anyway, that's digressing into completely different. And if you would love to discuss and talk about Scottish rugby some more, why not contact the pod through its social media channels or the URC Rewind? We're always looking for new presenters, especially for more Italian and Scottish voices. With that, I'm done. Does anyone have any other business before I properly sign this off?
No,
no. Right. So me, Nick, and Dan are all old. We're ready for our beds now. And to be honest, Hattie is always ready for a bed. So thank you, Hattie. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Dan. Thank you all for listening.
Welcome.
Nostar.
Nostar.